Republican Senator Thom Tillis announcing that he will not be seeking re-election next year in the battleground state of North Carolina. This just hours after President Trump posted on his social media platform berating the three-term senator who had defied Republican leadership by voting against the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill. Tillis has long expressed concerns about the impact of Medicaid cuts in the bill on North Carolina, announcing on Saturday that he would not support the legislation unless changes were made. Joining me now with more, ABC News Capitol Hill correspondent Jay O'Brien. Jay, it's a shame there's never drama in your neck of the woods. What more do we know about Republican Senator Thom Tillis' retirement announcement?
Yeah, this was stunning, Phil, because just last night, Thom Tillis was one of what at one point was 3 Republican holdouts, which eventually became 2 because one of those holdouts flipped his vote from no to yes. That was Ron Johnson. And then the 2 no votes on this key procedural vote on proceeding with the president's domestic agenda, the centerpiece of his legislative agenda, were Thom Tillis and Rand Paul. Rand Paul was lightly criticized by President Trump, and then Thom Tillis, President Trump, unloaded on him. In this lengthy post on Truth Social, he said he was making a quote-unquote big mistake for America, and then Trump signaled in a subsequent post that he would support primary challengers against Tillis, who's up for re-election next year in November. And then today, Thom Tillis comes out and says that he's not going to run for re-election next year. He is not going to seek a 3rd term in the Senate, and presumably he's going to continue his opposition against this bill. Obviously, that is a rebuke of President Trump, who really tried to turn the screws up and turn the pressure up onto Tillis to get him to potentially back this legislation. But also, Phil, it hardens the legislative math here because John Thune, the top Republican in the Senate, can only afford to lose 3 votes. He's likely not going to get Rand Paul to flip because Rand Paul has a series of issues with this legislative package, including the fact that it raises the debt ceiling. It doesn't look like they have much leverage now for Thom Tillis, who can't really be swayed by political pressure because he's not going to run for re-election. They can afford to lose 1 more, but a 4th, Phil, would tank this bill. We're on track for a final vote sometime early tomorrow morning. There's going to be this marathon vote series overnight, but the math getting more and more challenging for John Thune and President Trump.
Jay, Tillis is certainly not the only one to tussle with the president and then not seek re-election. And Senator Tillis said in a statement that leaders who embrace bipartisanship, compromise, and independent thinking are becoming, quote, an endangered species. What's the reaction to that statement in Washington? I mean, it's not really much of a secret.
We're waiting to see if there are any Republican senators who kind of join in that chorus, not necessarily saying that they're not going to seek re-election, but talking about their independence. Because remember, Phil, there are some moderate Republican senators especially who do not like what's in this bill and made it clear that they would vote yes on the procedural vote yesterday, but it didn't mean that they were going to vote for this bill ultimately when it came up for that final vote again sometime perhaps tomorrow morning. And really chief among those names is Susan Collins, who has also said she doesn't like the cuts made to Medicaid, that insurance program for low-income Americans and those with disabilities, that's made in this bill. Lisa Murkowski withheld her vote for a while on the Senate floor last night. She was shuttling back and forth, talking with various senators, unclear exactly what they were discussing. And then ultimately, after those lengthy conversations, Lisa Murkowski voted yes on that procedural vote. So there are these kind of independent-minded senators who still could tip the scales here, Phil.
All right, Jay, we'll get back to you and talk to you a little bit more about this soon. Jay O'Brien from Washington. Jay, thank you.